Alright, so this video we're going to look at angles and degree measures. So this right here is kind of goes over some definitions and stuff like that. And we work some problems converting from degrees, minutes, and seconds to decimals, and decimals to degrees, minutes, and seconds, and adding and subtracting angles that are in degrees, minutes, and seconds, and stuff like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So here we have some angles. This right here is an angle. You have the initial side here, okay? And then if you take this initial side and you rotate it, some angle measure, which we'll call alpha. You may see in some textbooks it's called theta. Alpha, theta, beta, gamma. Okay, so we're just going to use theta. And then you rotate this initial side, and where it stops, that's called the terminal side. And then this point right here where they meet, that's the vertex. Okay, and then we have a central angle. It's just an angle where the vertex is at the center of the circle. And this right here is the arc that's intercepted by the angle. Okay, so a central angle, that means the vertex is at the center of the circle. And then we have this angle in standard position. You'll probably see this a lot in trig, an angle in standard position. So if you have like an XY coordinate here, you've got the initial side right here. That goes along the positive x-axis, okay? Well, first off, the vertex is at the origin. The initial side is along the positive x-axis, and then we're rotating in a counterclockwise direction. We have our terminal side right here. This is an angle in standard position. So if you're working a problem and they say that you have an angle in standard position, that's what it means. The vertex at the origin at 0, 0, and the initial side is along the positive x-axis. And you can rotate it counterclockwise or you can rotate it clockwise. All right. So we have a definition here. It says the degree measure of an angle is the number of degrees in the intercepted arc of a circle centered at the vertex. The degree measure is positive if the rotation is counterclockwise and negative if the rotation is clockwise. So I mentioned that up here about rotating this either counterclockwise or clockwise. So if you rotate it counterclockwise, which is this way, that's a positive angle. If you rotate clockwise, which is this way, that's a negative angle. All right, and then we have some different angles here. We have an acute angle. So an acute angle, that's an angle that's between 0 and 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is between 90 and 180 degrees. A straight angle is 180 degrees. A right angle, that is 90 degrees. And that's what this symbol here means. That means these lines here are perpendicular, so they make a 90-degree angle. And then we have a quadrantal angle. That's when, okay, so we have the initial side here, and the terminal side falls on one of the axes. So in other words, it could fall here, or or it could be here, or it could be here. Okay. All right. So now let's look at coterminal angles. So coterminal angles, angles alpha and beta, are coterminal if and only if there's an integer k such that the measure of beta is equal to the measure of alpha plus k times 360 degrees. And there's a multiplication there. Okay, so we'll get back to this definition here for coterminal angles. We'll talk about that in just a minute. When we get an example, I'll explain it more. But the important part in this definition here is angles alpha and beta are coterminal if and only if there is an integer. That's the important term there, an integer k such that this is true. And I'll explain that in more detail when we get to that example. It'll be this example right here. But first, let's look at this. It says, find two positive angles and two negative angles that are coterminal with negative 50 degrees. All right, so before we get to this example working it, let's talk a little bit more about coterminal angles. So coterminal angles, so let's just say that we have an angle right here, and let's just say it's 30 degrees. Okay, so coterminal angles are two angles that have the same terminal side but different amounts of rotation. All right, so what I mean by that, so if we rotate this 30 degrees, well look, we could also do this. We could start here and rotate this. All right, and this blue right here, that's another angle. We go around what? 360, and then we go 30 more degrees. So this angle is 390 degrees. This angle and this angle are coterminal. They have the same terminal side. You see that? Just different amounts of rotation. So if you have an angle measure, to find an angle that's coterminal, you can just add 360 degrees to it. Or we could subtract 360 degrees to it. All right. All right, so now let's work this problem. It says find two positive angles and two negative angles. Okay, so let's find the positive ones first. So if I have negative 50 degrees, how am I going to find a coterminal angle? Well, I can add 360 degrees to that. So if I add 360 to negative 50, I get 310 degrees. Okay, so here's one solution. All right, so now let's take the negative 50, and I remember I've got to find two positive angles that are coterminal. All right, so let's throw this back up here again. So let's say we've got 30 degrees. All right, so here I can go around once, and remember that was 390. 390. I added 360 one time. But look, I could also do this. I could go around once and go around twice. You see that? So what did I do there? Well, remember when I went around one time, I added 360. And then when I go around twice, I add 360 two times. Okay, see, I start here, I go around 360, so I add 360, and then I go around another 360. So to find another one, I'm going to add 360, but I'm going to add it how many times? Twice. So 2 times 360, and that gives me 670 degrees. And if I wanted to, I could add 360 again. That would just be negative 50 plus 3 times 360. All right? All right. Now, that's my two positive angles. Now let's find the two negative angles. So if I take negative 50 degrees, I can subtract 360 degrees. All right, so if I subtract 360, that's going to give me negative 410 degrees. All right, so that angle's coterminal to negative 50. And then also, I need two negative. So I can what? I can subtract 360 twice. So 2 times 360. And if I subtract 360 twice, that's going to give me negative 770 degrees. And if you drew all of these angles out, the negative 50 and all four of these, if you drew those, they would all have the same terminal side, just different amounts of rotation. All right. All right, now let's look at this. So here it says determine whether angles in standard position with the given measures are coterminal. So we want to know, is 190 degrees coterminal with negative 170? Okay. Now, what you could do this. You could take 190, subtract 360, see if you get negative 170. Okay. You can do that. And sometimes you may have to subtract 360 more than one time to see if you get the other angle. Or you could take this and add 360 and see if you get this one. And that's one way that you can do it. But what if you have an angle measure of, say, 30 degrees, and then you have an angle measure of, say, 100,000, and you want to know if those are coterminal? Do you realize how many times you would have to subtract 360 from 100,000 to get to 30 degrees? Or how many times you would have to add 360 to 30 degrees to get to 100,000? You would be there forever. Okay? So that's where this right here comes in handy. All right? So we've got this, the measure of angle beta is equal to the measure of angle alpha plus k times 360. And remember what it says, if and only if there is an integer k such that this is true. Okay? All right. So let's work that problem. All right. So first, let's just go ahead and write down what we need to show. So it's the measure of beta is equal to the measure of alpha plus k times 360 degrees. That's what we're going to use. Okay? So let's plug everything in. Okay? Plug everything in and see what you get. So the measure of alpha, that's 190 degrees. So I've got 190, and you don't have to put the degrees. 190 plus, and that's k times 360. So that's 360k equals negative 170. Okay? So all I did is I replaced this measure of alpha with 190. And then I've got the k times 360, which is just 360 times k, equals the measure of angle beta. And what's beta? That's negative 170. So now let's solve this. So we're going to subtract 190 to both sides. So I get 360k is equal to negative 360. Divide both sides by 360. I get k equals negative 1. Okay, so this would be coterminal angles. So these angles are coterminal because what did it say? It says if and only if there is an integer k. And what did I get for k? I got an integer. Remember the integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. That's the integers, right? All right. So if you plug all this in and you solve for k and you get an integer as an answer, then that means they're coterminal. All right. All right. So let's look at this one. So we got the measure of beta is equal to the measure of alpha plus k times 360. All right, so let's plug everything in. So I'm going to plug the 150 in for the measure of alpha. So that's 150 plus, and that's 360k is equal to the measure of beta, which is, which is 880. All right, so now let's solve for k. So I get 360k, subtracting 150 to both sides, I get 730. Divide both sides by 360, so I get k equals 73 over 36. That doesn't reduce anymore. Now look at this. Is k an integer? No. So this is not coterminal. And that's all you got to do. So if you plug all this in, if when you solve for k, if you get an integer, they're coterminal. If you don't get an integer, they're not coterminal. And that's how you use this this property right here. All right. All right, so here, name the quadrant in which each angle lies. Okay, so this right here is a pretty big deal. This is important for in trig to know which quadrant you're in. So first, before we do that, let's look at this. So the quadrants. So we got quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. That's the quadrants. Okay, now whenever you're labeling this, this is 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270. Let's put the 0 degrees up here. 0 degrees, and then back to 360. Okay. All right. So when we look at this, we want to know which quadrant are we in. So the first one, well, that's easy. 230 degrees. So if we rotate, okay, we're rotating in a counterclockwise direction. Now 230, that's between 180 and 270. So you can see that's pretty easy. We're in quadrant 3. Okay. All right. Now, what happens here in B? We've got an angle measure of negative 580. Now, that's more difficult to figure out which quadrant, okay? It's so much easier if our angle measure is between 0 and 360. Well, what we can do, this negative 580, we can get it back. We can get it to be between 0 and 360 by using what? What we know about coterminal angles. Okay, so if I take this negative 580 and I add 360 to it, okay, let's see what I get. Negative 580 plus 360, that's going to give me negative 220. So remember, negative 580 and negative 220, they have the same terminal side. They're in the same quadrant. Okay, but look, negative 220, is that between 0 and 360? No. So let's add 360 again. So if I take negative 220 and add 360, that's going to give me, let's see, that gives me 140 degrees. Okay, so remember, these are all coterminal angles. Negative 580, negative 220, and 140. They all have the same terminal side. All right, so what quadrant is 140 degrees in? It's in the second quadrant. And so that's your answer. That's the same quadrant that negative 580 is in, because they're coterminal angles. All right, let's look at this, 1,380. All right, so let's take the 1,380 and let's get it back between 0 and 360. So let's subtract 360. So if I do 1,380 minus 360, that is going to give me 1,020. All right, so let's subtract again. We'll subtract 360 from that. That is 660 degrees. We're still not between 0 and 360, so let's take 660. Let's subtract 360, and that is 300 degrees. So remember, just like in part B, this angle, this angle, this angle, and this angle all have the same terminal side because they're coterminal angles. So which quadrant is 300 degrees in? Well, that's in the fourth quadrant because it's between 270 and 360. All right. Hopefully all this is sinking in. All right. All right, now let's look at this. So convert the measure to decimal degrees. Okay, so we've got an angle measure in degrees, minutes, and seconds, and we want to convert it to decimals. Okay, all right. So to do that, I've got 44 degrees plus 12 minutes. Now I've got to convert the 12 minutes to degrees. So to convert minutes to degrees, that's going to be 12 over 60. And that is degrees. Okay. Plus, and then I've got 30 minutes. So I've got to convert minutes to degrees. So that's going to be 30 over what? 3,600. Okay, because look, this is all we're doing. See, we've got 30 seconds, and you know, right now I can't remember if I said 30 minutes earlier. If I did, I meant seconds. Okay, we've got 30 seconds. So think about this: to go from seconds to minutes, we've got to divide this by 60, and that puts it in minutes. And then to go to degrees, we got to divide by 60 again. So what are we doing? We're dividing by 60 twice. 60 times 60 is 3,600. And then when you put all this into your calculator, you end up with 44.2083 degrees. And there's your answer. All right. All right, now what about this one? Convert the measure to degrees, minutes, seconds. All right, so what are we going to do here? How do we do that? All right, so I've got my 44 degrees here. So what you do is you take the decimal here, the 0.235. And now remember, this is in degrees. So we want to convert this into minutes. And the way we do that is we multiply by 60. And when I multiply that by 60, that's 14.1. And remember, this is minutes now. So right now, what I have for this is 44 degrees, 14.1 minutes. Okay, I've got it converted to degrees, minutes, but they want degrees, minutes, seconds. So what I do now is I've got to take this decimal on the minutes, the 0.1, and I've got to convert that to seconds. Now remember, this is minutes, so to go from minutes to seconds, we're going to multiply by 60, and that equals 6. And remember, that is seconds. So this becomes 44 degrees, 14 minutes, and remember the 0.1 minute here is now 6 seconds. And there's your answer. You see how easy this stuff is? Nothing to it. And this lesson really isn't that long. It's not bad at all. All right. So now, how about this? Perform the indicated operations. Express answers in degrees, minutes, seconds format. All right, so we want to add the two. So the easiest way to add these, we've got 13 degrees, 45 minutes, 33 seconds, and we're adding 9 degrees, 33 minutes, and 39 seconds. We want to add that, okay? So all we're going to do, we're going to add the seconds together, we're going to add the minutes together, and then we're going to add the degrees together, okay? So I've got the 33 plus 9, that's 2, carry your 1, that's 72 seconds, okay? And then I'm going to add the minutes together, so that's going to be 8, and then 4 plus 3 is 7, that's 78 minutes. And then add the degrees together, that's going to be 22 degrees. All right. Now, when we look at this, okay, when we look at this, we can't leave it like this because we've got 78 minutes. We've got 72 seconds here. So we've got to fix that. All right. So take a look at this 72 seconds right here. This is what we're going to focus on right now. The 72 seconds. Okay. So let's suppose this 72 seconds. Let's take 1 minute out of that. Okay. So that's going to give me 22 degrees, 79 minutes. So I took a minute out of this and added it to the 78 degrees. Okay. So if I take a minute out of this, I'm left with 12 seconds. Okay. So I took 1 minute out of this. What's 1 minute? That's 60 seconds. You see that? So I take the 60 seconds out, and that becomes 1 minute, and I add it to this. So one minute plus 78 minutes is 79 minutes. But to take that minute out of the seconds, that's like taking out 60 seconds. So 72 minus 60, that's where I get the 12 from. Now I need to take a degree out of this. 1 degree. Well, 1 degree is what? 60 minutes. So if I take 1 degree out of this and add it over here, that's 23 degrees. So if I take 1 degree out, that's like taking out, see, take out 1 degree. That's like taking out 60 minutes. They're the same thing. And so that's going to leave me with 19 minutes, and then that's still just 12 seconds. And that would be your answer. Okay? So if when you're doing this, if your seconds or minutes or your minutes is larger than 60 or 60 or more, then you've got to do this to it. Okay? All right. Now, let's look at this. Subtracting. So I've got 45 degrees minus 6 degrees, 45 minutes, and 30 seconds. All right. So what we have is we have 45 degrees, and then I've got 6 degrees, 45 minutes, and 30 seconds. Okay. Now I've got to subtract, right? I've got to do this minus this. But I need something up here in the minutes, and I need something up here in the seconds. So I'm going to have to borrow from the degrees. I'm going to borrow 1 degree. Okay, so I'm going to have to write this out several times. So if I borrow 1 degree, that's going to take that to 44 degrees, right? And if I take that degree and put it over here in the minutes, that's going to be 60 minutes. See that? Now I've got to have something over the seconds. So I've got to borrow a minute. So if I borrow a minute, that's going to be 59 minutes, and bring it over here. Well, 1 minute is 60 seconds. All right. So that actually gives me 44 degrees, 59 minutes, and 60 seconds. And that's 6 degrees, 45 minutes, 30 seconds. And then I subtract. So that's going to be 30 degrees. And then subtract this, that's 14 minutes. Subtract this, that is 38 degrees. And this is your answer. All right. All right, so let's take a look at another one. All right, so I've got 36 degrees, 5 minutes, minus 22 degrees, 33 minutes, and 12 seconds. So let's write it out. So that's 36 degrees, 5 minutes, minus 22 degrees, 33 minutes, and 12 seconds. All right. All right, so how am I going to do this? Okay, so the thing we've got to look at here is, notice the 5 here is smaller than this 33. It's got to be bigger than the 33. So we're going to have to borrow again. So we're going to have to borrow from the 36, and that's going to make it 35. We have to bring that 1 degree over here, okay? But remember, that 1 degree is changing to 60 minutes, so this is going to be 65 minutes. Now, how did I get the 65 minutes? Well, the 1 degree is 60 minutes. The 60 minutes plus the 5 minutes is 65 minutes. And then I'm going to need a number here, so I'm going to have to borrow from the 65, and that's going to make it 64. And I take that 1 minute, and that becomes 60 seconds. So now my problem is 35 degrees, 64 minutes, 60 seconds, and that's 22 degrees, 33 minutes, and 12 seconds. And then we can subtract. So we've got 60 minus 12, that's going to be 48 seconds, and then 64 minus 33 for the minutes, that's 31 minutes, and then the 35 minus 22, that is 13 degrees. And that is your answer. Okay, so, typically subtraction's the more difficult to do, but it's not bad. It's not bad at all. All right, now let's look at this next one. All right, so here we're dividing. So let's just rewrite it. 21 degrees, 27 minutes, 36 seconds over 2. So all I'm doing here is I'm dividing 2 into each one. Okay, so this 2 goes into 21, that's 10.5 degrees. 2 goes into 27, that's 13.5 minutes. And then we've got the 36 seconds. So 2 goes into 36, that's 18 seconds. All right. So what in the world do we do here? How do we do this? Okay, so I want to get rid of the halves. Okay, so we've got half a minute. Let's write it like this. This right here is a minute. Well, I don't need to write minutes. I got the symbol here. 1/2 minute is equal to what? 30 seconds, right? A half a minute is 30 seconds. So if I take this half minute and I move it over here to the seconds, well, half a minute is 30 seconds. So 30 plus 18 is 48 seconds. And then I've got the 13 minutes here. You see that? And then let's go ahead and write the 10.5 degrees. Okay. All right. So now we want to get rid of this half on the degrees. So I know that half a degree is equal to 30 minutes. So if I take the half a degree off of here, well, that's 30 minutes. The 30 minutes plus 13 minutes is 43 minutes, and there's my 48 seconds. And that would leave me with my 10 degrees. Okay. All right, let's see. Yeah, we got one more. All right, so hope everybody's good with this so far. Okay. All right, so let's look at this. This is the last example. Okay. Find the degree measure of angle alpha. All right, so we can do that. So we've got 180, we got 88 degrees, 40 minutes for one angle, 37 degrees, 52 minutes for another angle, and we need alpha. Well, what do we know about a triangle? Well, all the angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So I just have to do 180 minus this. See that? So I think the easiest thing to do is add these two together and then subtract that from 180. All right. So first, let's do 88 degrees, 40 minutes, and 37 degrees, 52 minutes. All right. Let's add those together. So that's going to be 92 minutes. And this is going to be, what is that? 5, carry our 1, and that's 125 degrees. Now, the degrees, they can be, however much you want them to be. Plus 37, make sure I got my numbers right, 125. Because if I add something wrong, I hear about it in the comments. All right. So here we go. We've got that. We got the 125 degrees, 92 minutes. But remember, see this 92 minutes, that's over 60, right? So I'm going to take a minute from here and I'm going to add it to this degree over here. So I'm going to take away from the minutes. So I got to take away 60 minutes, and that converts into 1 degree. So that's 126 degrees. And then if I do 92 minus 60, that's what? 32 minutes. See that? All right. So these two angles add up to 126 degrees, 32 minutes. All right. So, and evidently in this problem, they just want the angle measure in degrees and minutes. Evidently they don't want degrees, minutes, and seconds. Okay. So we're going to give the answer in degrees and minutes. So now I've got to do what? To get alpha, that's 180 minus this angle right here. Okay. So that's 126, 32. 126 degrees, 32 minutes. Well, we've got to get something in the minutes up here, don't we? So I'm going to take a degree out of the 180. And that turns into 60 minutes. So I've got 179 degrees, 60 minutes, and I've got 126 degrees, 32 minutes. And I subtract. Okay. So I've got 60 minus 32, that is 28 minutes. And then 179 minus 126, that is 53 degrees. And so this is alpha. All right? Because remember, all three angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. All right, so that's all of this one. Be sure to watch the other ones. I'm going to have all the lecture videos on all of Trig. So, search through the playlist and see if you see another one you need to watch. But check out my other videos. Give me a like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.